Unlocking the full potential of your ERP. Are you frustrated with your ERP? You want to find a better solution? So where are you now? Maybe your monthly management pack takes senior staff much more time than seems reasonable to prepare in Excel. And the consequences of that are you don't get the strategic management information you need when you need it, and that is compromising decision-making and profitability. Possibly you think you may have the wrong ERP, and that can lead to frustration, inaction, excessive costs, discouragement. Potentially you have expensive consultants supporting your ERP years after you expected them to have left, and that can cause a lack of ownership and trust in the ERP and excessive costs. So where do you want to be? Visualize the ERP runs smoothly and you have answers to any reasonable question of the data in the ERP almost instantaneously. Imagine you're confident you have the right ERP and you speak freely to your peers of the value you're getting from your ERP. Picture a time when business profitability and competitiveness is significantly and visibly improved by the use of your ERP, and this is visible to shareholders. So if this is where you are, frustration, and this is where you want to be, exceptional ERP value and performance, how are you going to get there? I am confident you'll get there through applying my ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology. What do I mean by my ERP Accelerator methodology? A rigorous systematic methodology which delivers an ERP that is precisely configured and implemented to first and foremost facilitate and support strategic executive decision-making. This cascades down throughout the organization to deliver exceptional lean agility, productivity, and efficiency, thereby enabling immeasurably improved profitability and competitiveness that is visible to and recognized by the shareholders. So why is realizing the full potential of your ERP so important? A strategically precision-configured ERP is a powerful resource in the hands of the top team. Operational and strategic effectiveness and efficiency is powerfully boosted. The CEO, top team, and management have confidence in the ERP. The reputation of the CEO and the top team is greatly enhanced. So why is now the right time? Never has there been a time when your competitors are also battling and you have this unique opportunity to get ahead of them. Given what is happening with the global economy right now, can you afford to get left behind? Because the old way of doing ERP is no longer working, and it is now strategically crippling organizations. Would you like to learn more? Over the years, I have learned a considerable amount of really valuable information relating to delivering high-value results from ERP, and I encourage you to stay on, and I will share with you how to do this. How the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator helped one client. I'd like to share a story about one of my projects, and what follows names have been changed in the interest of confidentiality. I've called the ERP Fred, standing for frightfully ridiculous electronic device, because the ERP brand is not material to the story. Have you ever wondered what enables a highly effective ERP implementation? Have you ever asked yourself what would need to change for your firm to have a high strategic value ERP implementation? Have you ever considered that it is possible to create an ERP environment that adds real strategic and competitive value to your firm? It's Monday the 2nd of June. Daniel Eaton is the Chief Financial Officer of XYZ Holdings, a large listed manufacturer and distributor of bespoke agricultural fertilizer and mining explosives. They've recently been told by Peter Smith, the account manager for their Fred ERP, that Fred are rolling out version 5 and XYZ have till 31st of December to upgrade, or Fred will withdraw the support. Peter has further indicated that the upgrade will break all of their customization, which was necessary because Fred is not a particularly good fit to XYZ's business. In addition, the implementation has not gone well, so many of the management team are of the opinion that Fred is not fit for purpose and should be replaced, but they've only just completed the project and it's cost nearly $1 million. Replacing Fred now will massively damage the business and the shareholders will be highly displeased, not to mention the reputational risk for the CEO and CFO. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where things look really hopeless and you've absolutely no idea how you're going to get out of it? Daniel received my email inviting him to my half-day executive briefing on why your ERP is not delivering and how to fix it, and he registered. It is now 1 p.m. on the 19th of June, and I've just completed presenting my intensive 5-hour executive briefing on the factors causing ERP failure and what is required to remediate such situations. Daniel has asked lots of questions and is clearly engaged with what I'm saying. After I complete my presentation, Daniel comes up to me, clearly enthused by what I've had to say. Dr. Robertson, this has been really illuminating. Thank you. As you know, I'm the CFO of XYZ Holdings. We have a major crisis with our big brand Fred ERP. We've recently completed implementation. The management staff are highly dissatisfied. They say we bought the wrong ERP and should scrap it and start again. To crown it all, Fred are rolling out version 5 at the end of the year and tell us they will withdraw support for version 4. Version 5 will break all our customization. We're at a total loss what to do. Can you help us? Daniel, by all means, let me come in for a few days and do one of my diagnostic pulse measurables, and I will then be in a position to advise you with regard to the best course of action. Great. What's your earliest availability? I consult my diary. I can do any time next Tuesday. Great. I will clear my diary. Please email me a proposal and I'll have the order ready for you when we meet. Based on what I've heard this morning, take it as a given that we will go ahead. Very well, in that case, please schedule an hour for you and the CEO to brief me, and then an hour one-on-one with the CEO, and then with you, followed by a walkthrough of the business by you and the CEO. Thereafter, please schedule 1 hour one-on-ones with each of your executive team and then the managers responsible for running Fred. In addition, please arrange meetings with those who have implemented and run Fred together with a walkthrough of the system. We will need about 3 days. I will email you my availability. Certainly, I'll get on to it right away. Have you ever experienced a situation where things in the business seemed hopeless and suddenly you see a way forward that radically shifts things? It's 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 24th of June and Michael the CEO and Daniel are briefing me. James, there's a further complexity. John the IT manager has a really bad attitude. He seems to be technically competent, but we think he's part of the problem and are not sure whether to let him go. Please will you evaluate this at the same time? Certainly, I'll meet with him. I'll evaluate his viability going forward. I follow my usual pulse measurement process, interview after interview, asking my set of standard questions, listening attentively, and taking copious notes. Part of my ERP Doctor brand is that I operate a lot in the mode of a personal counselor, asking questions, taking notes, and not commenting very much. It's remarkable how people open up when they feel they're really being listened to. I've invested significant time in learning how to be a really effective listener and drawing people out. On occasion, I've had interesting experiences with this approach. I also asked people about John and got their viewpoints. I produced my standard short report, the 7 critical findings weighted in terms of relative importance, and the 7 key recommendations also weighted in terms of importance. I meet with Michael and Daniel and share my findings. Number 1. Fred is not a good fit to XYZ Group, and therefore, as you know, there's been a considerable amount of custom development. 2, this is coupled to a corporate policy not to make any changes to the Fred code, and this has resulted in the custom work all being out of and alongside Fred, with the consequence that use of Fred is very clumsy and is a major factor in the problems being experienced. This policy needs to be revoked and changes made to the software. That said, if that policy is withdrawn, with limited changes inside the software, the ease of use will be dramatically improved. So much so that, subject to further investigation, it's my opinion that Fred and the custom work can be remediated to serve the business well for many years. That's great. But James, what about the version 5 situation? Michael exclaimed. Yes, I was getting to that. There's a legal principle called the right to maintain and repair, and I'm confident we can get a legal ruling to force Fred to support version 4 as long as we want. That's excellent. How do we move forward on that? I suggest we arrange a meeting with the account manager as soon as possible, and I'll set out the legal position. If you're interested, you can see there Wikipedia has an article on the right to maintain and repair. Returning to my findings, there's a broad consensus that John has a really bad attitude, and that has contributed to the problem. I also found that he has some rather strange ideas about business information systems which suggest he has played a key role in digging XYZ into the situation. He was apparently the originator of the zero changes in code policy. I regret that you're correct. We need to let him go. I walk with him through the remaining findings and recommendations. Michael and Daniel accept all of my recommendations. Daniel and I meet with Peter Smith of Fred. I set out the position with regard to the right to maintain and repair. 3 days later, Peter returns with a contract committing to support version 4 for another 5 years. You can see there on the graph that there's a strong upward trend. It's not at a very good level, but there's the opportunity to raise the bar considerably. On the second day, after we've developed the strategic trajectory which shows a solid upward trend, I speak to Michael during lunch and advise him that there's clear evidence that Fred can be made to work. After lunch, Fred stands up with his arms folded and looks at his executive team and states, "Gentlemen, we can all see that Fred can do the job. I will not tolerate any further corridor talk about getting rid of Fred. Now make it work." And that experience, exemplified by that image, is behind the make it work component of the ERP Accelerator, which we'll talk about a bit later. XYZ terminated John immediately. I helped them to find a new IT manager who embraces the way forward that I'm recommending. Chap I'd worked with a few years previously at another client, and who I was able to strongly recommend. I spent a further 10 days going through every problem area and produce a detailed remediation specification and plan, setting out everything that needs to be done to get Fred fully supporting the business. The plan is accepted and successfully implemented. XYZ Group ran with Fred for another 8 years before they finally replaced Fred. Today, I love nothing more than enabling clients to achieve long-lasting, high-value ERP implementations that support profitability and competitive advantage, as I did for XYZ Group. This case study is why my clients implement my ERP Accelerator, which I'll go through in a moment. But before I do you have any idea what percentage of substandard ERP implementations can be remediated? The figure's around 95%, and my ERP Accelerator methodology is the way to do this. In considering this outcome, it is important to understand that I applied all the elements of my ERP Accelerator methodology. 1, diagnose. I undertook the pulse measurement and established that the implementation could be fixed and how to fix it. 2, custody. I facilitated Michael and the top team taking ownership of the system. Align. I identified the strategic essence of the business and advised what was necessary to align with this. The strategic driver is differentiation through high levels of customer service and product differentiation. This was a major driver for the high levels of customization. 4, decision. I facilitated a decision that Fred could be remediated. Precision. In my technical report, I listed all the areas where configuration was sloppy and needed to be remediated, and provided detailed guidance on achieving precision configuration. Here you see an example of sloppy configuration. 6, prove it works. I set out everything that was necessary for the laboratory to prove it works. 7, make it work. The top team made sure that the revised implementation was made to work. Returning to the start of my story, a highly effective ERP implementation results from the rigorous application of my ERP Accelerator methodology for ERP success. High-value ERP outcomes are achieved through precision configuration informed by executive custody, strategic alignment, rigorous testing, and a make-it-work executive stance. From this case study, you can see that it is possible to create an ERP implementation that adds real strategic and competitive value for your organization. Would you like to learn the components of the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology? Following this, I will share with you my unique ERP Accelerator methodology. Now I would like to give you an overview of the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology, exactly what the ERP Doctor advises clients to do in order to secure an exceptional ERP outcome that boosts efficiency and effectiveness, profitability, competitiveness, shareholder satisfaction, CEO reputation. Who is James Robertson? I'm a professional engineer with a bachelor's and doctoral degrees in engineering. A very diverse experience. I'm a former military commander, lieutenant colonel. I know what it's like to lead a large organization of unwilling conscripts. I have a grounding in economics. I understand what's necessary for businesses to make profit. I have a deep strategic understanding of and the ability to discern the strategic essence of businesses. I have deep executive experience, understanding, and insight. I've been advising in the executive suite for many, many years. I have considerable skill with regard to taxonomies and classifications. And I have diverse, deep ERP experience, including troubleshooting and turning around many, many cases. So I have a solid understanding of the basics of software design and construction, so I can talk to technical people on a reasonable footing. This unconventional body of knowledge and experience positions me uniquely to deliver a radically better ERP outcome. What's different about my approach? Why should you consider it? My methods are my own. They're radically different and better. They're developed from a first principles engineering, military, and strategy approach and lots of practical experience. They're proven in practice, learned by trial and error and practical observation. They're not contaminated with the standard industry thinking that delivers 70% of suboptimal ERP executive outcomes. They're totally different and dramatically better. I help the client to model the real world in the ERP, making it easy to understand and easy to report on. Are you dissatisfied with your ERP? Then please listen on. Why is this important? What is different? The gun is neither good nor bad. The value of the gun is determined by the person holding the gun. If the gun is pointed at you, then the gun is bad. If the gun is pointed at someone you consider to be bad, then the gun is good. The value of technology is determined by the person using the technology, and the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator focuses on this. This is not about technology. All mainstream ERP software is robust, reliable, well-designed, and well-built. The issue is not the software, folks. The issue is what you do with the software. Why is the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator important? ERP suboptimal outcomes at the executive level are rampant. Different views indicate from 55% to 95% of ERP implementations do not deliver what was promised at the executive level. The average figure of 70% has been around for over 20 years, and some sources suggest off the record that the figure is closer to 95% at the executive level. Numerous consulting firms have been advertising they have the solution for years, and yet the situation has not improved. A drastically different and better method is called for. The ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator approach is the answer. Some articles on the subject. A Google search for percentage of ERP projects that do not deliver what was promised comes up with a result. Gartner, 55 to 75%. You can't really get more credible than Gartner as an authority. Searching on ChatGPT, 72% of ERP implementations do not deliver what was promised at the strategic executive level. Inadequate executive decision support is 25% of that. ChatGPT sources: Gartner, Forrester, Panorama Consulting, industry case studies and postmortems, SAP and Oracle post-project reviews, CIO.com and Tech Republic, anecdotal field reports and forums, ERP user communities, Reddit, SAP communities, Spiceworks. 70% ERP non-performance figure has been around for decades. The ERP industry implementers, big and small, and consultants, big and small, are all getting better at doing the things that deliver the 70% plus suboptimal executive outcome. Albert Einstein is reported to have said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So that's a good reason to listen to this presentation. Can you relate to this experience? How is value created? Value is created by business actions that deliver on the essence of why the organization exists and how it thrives. Value manifests through increased profitability, growth, acquisitions, job satisfaction, fulfillment of the strategic vision. Value is the consequence of intuitive, intelligent, informed leadership business decisions, in other words, thrive decisions. Such decisions are facilitated, accelerated, and enhanced through access to more meaningful and intelligent and relevant information. Answers to the questions I've not yet thought to ask. Such intelligent data is assembled as a consequence of high-level strategic and executive-level input into the design of the data content. Taxonomy is designed to catalog every conceivable relevant classification ahead of time. Now an overview of the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology. This methodology has evolved over the years, it's been proven in practice, and I'm now going to take you through, step by step, through the methodology. The first skill to master is diagnose ERP health. The problem I see is that CEOs cannot get the information they need from the ERP when they need it, and this is compromising profitability and competitiveness, and they do not know why. And that leads to suboptimal business decisions, shareholder dissatisfaction, and CEO reputational damage. So my clients use the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator pulse measurement methodology and checklist to understand why the ERP is not delivering and what was promised and what is required to fix it. And the advantage that gives them is a clear picture of what needs to be done, coupled to tighter management control, increased profitability and competitiveness, leading to increased dividends and resultant shareholder satisfaction and improved CEO reputation. In doing this work as a graduate professional engineer, I've come to understand that engineers do not design bridges to stand up. Engineers design bridges not to fall down. Engineers design against failure and focus on preventing failure to achieve success. That's why I often talk about failure, because by preventing failure, I can ensure success. So don't be turned off by the fact that I talk about the negatives. There's a lot of people who say you shouldn't talk about the negative, but folks, if you don't recognize the negative exists, how do you prevent it from happening? What's a pulse measurement? I've investigated dozens of ERP implementations that have failed or were suboptimal, and advised clients how to turn them around. Pulse measurement is a concise diagnostic intervention. It starts with executive interviews, understand the strategic essence, the critical concerns, and the critical success factors. I then drill down to systems. The deliverable is a concise letter report presenting ±7 bullet point experientially based findings weighted, and ±7 experientially based recommended actions also weighted. The findings are frequently so practical that the client can continue unaided. This is all based on a deep experientially based understanding of what does and does not work with regard to ERP. I like to look at the pulse measurement, and I have this play on the ERP doctor. When you go to a medical practitioner, general practitioner, that person will ask you a series of questions, take a few readings, blood pressure, pulse, etc., and they will make a diagnosis. Based on years of training and years of experience, they will either say to you, here's a prescription, take these tablets for 6 weeks or 6 days or whatever, and call me if it doesn't go away, or hold on, I'm going to call an ambulance, or take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. I do the same. I've done this so many times that I've come across just about everything that can go wrong, and I know just about everything that can be done to fix it. And that's encapsulated in my approach. In response to the pulse measurements, I analyzed all my experience to date and extracted the 7 critical factors causing failure and the 7 critical factors for success. I then wrote the book, The Critical Factors for Information Technology Investment Success. Since then, I have authored and presented courses and executive briefings based on the book. Why your ERP is not delivering and how to fix it, a 5-hour executive briefing. ERP in Strategic and Competitive Management, a full-day management course. The Critical Factors for ERP Investment Success, a 2-day management course. These have been presented dozens of times over many years, so I really know my material intimately. The second skill to master is dictate CEO and C-suite custody. The problem I see is that the CEO is the custodian of the holistic integrated view of the business, which is the domain of the ERP, but someone else is responsible for the operation of the ERP. Without CEO executive direction into the ERP implementation, there cannot be executive level output from the ERP. And that leads to suboptimal system governance, giving rise to suboptimal configuration and skewed implementation that is deficient and damages the business. So my clients appoint the CEO as custodian of the ERP and use the ERP Doctor Executive ERP checklist and charters to establish C-suite ownership of the respective modules, supported by a senior expert advisor and agent, the strategic ERP project leader, together with implemented executive custody and project management by the implemented team. And the advantage that gives them is tight management of the ERP by the CEO and the C-suite, so that the business owns and guides the ERP at the highest possible level. The options. top-down strategy focused design. And what you can see there is you have a clear view of what the goal is, what the essence is, and how the business differentiates itself, what the executive information requirement is, and you cascade it down into the design. Alternatively, you can do bottom-up design. Start with the processes, and you can sit with mid-level staff who have no idea of what that top view looks like, and spend a whole lot of time mapping processes. And by the way, they tend to be inaccurate. I once had an experience where a client got very upset with me because I was focused on precision configuration and was ignoring process. So we brought in a consultant to map the processes. He sat with the two creditors clerks. They gave him two different processes for the creditors process. He documented what he thought was the best process, and he sat with the two ladies, and they said, no, that's not the way it is at all, and they gave him something completely different. Why? Because there are actually something like 7 creditors or accounts payable processes, varying from if you're ordering standard pens from the local stationers on a standard account through to massive capital acquisition. Process is not the place to start if you want a strategic ERP implementation. Precision configuration driven by the executive suite is where you start. So what is strategy? Professor Malcolm MacDonald defines strategy as doing the right things viewed from the customer's perspective, and tactics as doing things right viewed from the customer's perspective. MacDonald states that if a business does the right things well, it will thrive, and that's the basis of my logo. He goes on to say that if the business does the wrong things, it will die. It's just a matter of how quickly. I've seen badly executed ERP implementations put a company out of business, and badly executed ERP implementations do considerable damage. An example: the client had a service promise. Order into the call center by 3 in the afternoon. We will dispatch no later than 10 a.m. next business day. They didn't want to take chances. They went with one of the top 4 consultancies in the world. Big brand, you'd know it if I mentioned it. And they went with a big brand ERP. The day they went live, they missed their service promise by 2 days. 6 months later, they'd fired the implementers and hired another big brand firm. They lost their biggest customer, 40% of revenue, out the door like that. They were no closer to an answer. They brought me in. In 3 days, I told them what the problem was, but I could not find anybody who could tell me how to fix it. I told them how to fix it, and in 6 weeks they were back up and running, and the lost customer came back to them. They nearly went out of business. And that is the measure of what a failure to understand the strategy of the business can do in an ERP implementation. The third skill to master is strategic alignment of the ERP. The problem I see is that the strategic essence of the business is poorly defined, and the ERP is implemented in a manner that ignores, contradicts, and cripples business strategy, and that leads to loss of competitiveness and overall strategic inefficiency that compromises profitability and competitiveness. So my clients undertake thorough strategic analysis using the ERP Doctor StratSnap methodology and checklist, and weave the results into every facet of the configuration and implementation of the ERP to get strategic information out. There must be executive strategic input to the implementation and management of the ERP. And the advantage that gives clients is that the entire organization is strategically aligned and becomes more strategically effective and efficient, therefore more competitive and more profitable, with resultant reputational benefits. What is my definition of strategy? The essence of why the organization exists and how it thrives. Strategy is a holistic, integrated picture of how the entire organization fits together and interoperates with the external environment to produce a thrive outcome. On commencement of the project, I undertake strategic analysis with the C-suite. StratSnap critical concerns with regard to the ERP project. StratSnap critical strategic requirements for the ERP project. StratSnap critical success factors for the ERP project. Other StratSnaps as necessary. Possibly one or more further workshops with major divisions, including manufacturing, operations, finance, etc. The project should recommence with this to set the strategic direction and ensures leadership are all on the same page. Part of the process, critical factors weighted according to the StratSnap. And what you see here is an output of one of the workshops. And what you have there on the left is 7 critical factors that have been synthesized and formulated by the management team. This is the team, the initials across the top there. And what you see there for this third factor, 2 of the people think that it's 25% of what's important, and somebody else thinks it's 7% of what's important. So what we get here is what I call the views of the mountain. If we take it that the project is to get the business to the top of the mountain, it's legitimate that people all see the business differently. So production, operations, marketing, finance, etc. will legitimately see the business differently. However, if they all set different priorities for the ERP project, they will end up all over the place, all trying to climb the mountain their own way. So it's absolutely vital to agree one way up the mountain. And that's part of what the StratSnap process does. It facilitates the top team or any other team to come into alignment in terms of what the critical factors are and in terms of what the priorities are. Have you had experience of different views around the table? Strategic trajectory. This one is ho-hum with room for improvement. So what we're looking at here, folks, is in this case, it's a 3-year time view. We're saying 3 years ago the system was a 4 out of 10. Today it's a 4.2 out of 10. If we keep going the way we're going, we might get to about a 4.8 out of 10. We want to be at least a 7.2 out of 10. But what we can see here is that the ERP is going in the right direction, even if it's only just going in the right direction. And we saw that clearly with the example that I shared a few minutes ago. And then we can see the gap that needs to be closed, and we can formulate what needs to be done in order to close that gap, as I did for XYZ Group. Here's another example, very, very different, heading for the rocks at a cracking pace. Clear diagnostic. This might be telling you need to replace your ERP, but it could be telling you other things as well. It has to be seen in context. So why is strategic alignment critical? The essence of the business must be accurately modeled in the ERP. Lack of strategic alignment can result in the ERP getting in the way of the strategic fundamentals of the business and crippling it, as in the example just shared. Constantly monitor the ERP implementation against the essence, the right things from the customer's perspective. Look for opportunities to use the ERP implementation to differentiate against competitors. Strengthen the strategic driving force. The time dependency of strategy. Strategy is not a forecast. You need a forecast, but it's not strategy. It's also not an objective. You need a goal, but it's also not a strategy. A strategic plan is a path to competitive advantage. A strategic plan is an exponential curve whereby you apply forces at the beginning to bring about change in the organization in the end. And here we see an example, Gillette. And you're all familiar with the modern Gillette brand. It's quite prestigious. And that's the trajectory of change that the CEO took that company through for exponential growth. And that's the sort of thing that we're talking about, doing things differently and better viewed from the customer's perspective and using the ERP to facilitate that. And a little bit later in this presentation, I will share with you a fair amount of detail about where I managed to do that for a client of mine. Here we just see that differently, just the point that I made a minute ago. Strategic change requires forces to be applied to the business. Forces, projects, initiative, policy changes to be applied to the business in order to achieve the required strategic objectives. The fourth skill to master is decision, whether to remediate, re-implement, or replace the ERP. The problem I see is that executives and managers are convinced that they have the wrong ERP because the ERP is so inefficient and so difficult to use at the strategic executive level, and that leads them being paralyzed from taking measures to remediate the situation, notwithstanding the reality that 95% of faulty ERPs can be remediated. And the advantage that gives them is that client executives immediately start taking constructive actions to address the situation and remediate or re-implement the ERP or replace it. So my clients' executives apply the ERP Accelerator decision checklist and score sheet, and where applicable, the ERP Doctor Secure Procurement methodology, and go forward decisively with a clear plan to remediate, re-implement, or replace as appropriate. The fifth skill to master is precision ERP configuration. The problem I see is that most ERPs are at best suboptimally or at worst shockingly badly configured. Tables like the chart of accounts, dimensions, item class, etc. are sloppy, illogical, and unstructured, making posting inaccurate and reporting a nightmare. And that leads to a situation where even simple reports are difficult to produce, reports do not agree, and overall efficiency and effectiveness of the business is severely compromised at the expense of profitability and competitiveness. So my clients use the ERP Doctor Precision ERP Configuration Checklist to evaluate the health of the ERP configuration, and then use the ERP Doctor Precision ERP Configuration methodology informed by the previous steps to systematically reconfigure the ERP. And the advantages that give them is that the ERP becomes easy to use, posting is fast and accurate, data quality improves dramatically. And analysis and reporting is simple and easy to do. They can get answers to questions they had not previously thought to ask with a few mouse clicks. And the ERP becomes the heart of a command console approach to board meetings. And what we see here is a library, and what experiences when one goes to a well-run library is you're looking for a particular book, you go to the catalog, it tells you exactly what shelf to go to, you go there and there's the book. And this is what we're talking about when it comes to precision configuration. What you see there is a hierarchical structured list. This is also a chart of accounts and hierarchical structured codes. When it comes to precision ERP configuration, think of it this way. You need 16 8-gauge diameter, 1-inch long countersunk crosshead black wood screws for hinges to mount a door in your house. You visit the nearest hardware store expecting to find the screws in packets neatly arranged on shelves so you can quickly and easily locate the exact screws you're looking for. Instead, you find a jumbled mess of screws, nails, and other fasteners in a large bin, and the shop assistant advises you to empty the bin on the floor and assures you that you will find what you're looking for and offers you a complex bit of machinery at £5 an hour to help you find what you're looking for. Would you do this? Or would you turn on your heel and go to another hardware store where the screws are neatly arranged? This mishmash of screws and complex software is the way that the content in many ERP validation tables is arranged, as per the examples following. And many organizations pay expensive consultants to search for the screws in the jumbled mess, and every time someone adds new screws to the pile, they start all over again. An extreme example of bad practice. Here's a company that went bankrupt because of sloppy configuration in the chart of accounts. So what you see here is a completely unstructured list. Safety clothing, sand and stone, consumable, services, fairly big ticket item, skips and cages, an asset, all jumbled up together. The mess was so bad that when I interviewed the CEO, he said to me, James, I have one tunnel. They cannot tell me what it's costing per meter to drive that tunnel. In a year's time, I will have 30 tunnels. What am I going to do? I then found out that they had hired a lady who was a registered chartered accountant who had spent 6 months trying to balance the financial statements and failing. And you've only got to look at that to understand why that happened. I advised them to re-implement. They decided that that was more than they could swallow. 3 months later, they went bankrupt. Another very simple example. The darn system has lost my data, in this case nearly 1 million. What you find here, this is an integration table setting up mappings to the general ledger, and somebody had left out a whole lot of codes. Very simple to fix. 1 million found like that. What is a taxonomy? A taxonomy is a logical word semantic structure, a precision vocabulary of preferred terms. It conveys understanding between humans with relevant knowledge and experience. Once linked to a precision code scheme, the most important communication mechanism between computers and people. An art and a science. And once it's right, it's obvious. I frequently encounter people who think that that sort of thing is trivial and they think it's easy. It requires strategic insight from the top team to set the priorities for that hierarchy. It requires a comprehensive understanding of the business to establish the detailed content. But once you have captured that level of detail, you have something powerful. What is a code scheme? Computers only understand binary. The code is a unique binary pattern that corresponds to the structured English taxonomy. It's the only way the computer will appear to be intelligent. It results in intelligent data. I apply standard conventions, indents and trailing periods, capitalization, etc., which you can see in that table. The sixth skill to master is prove it works, war games and rigorous testing. The problem I see is that most ERPs are suboptimally or shockingly badly tested before go live. User acceptance testing, UAT, is a wholly inadequate concept, and that leads to hacked last-minute fixes, inadequately trained staff who use the ERP inefficiently, half-baked processes, deficient reports, and generally suboptimal ERP functioning. So my clients use the ERP Doctor Prove It Works methodology and checklist to comprehensively test the ERP, define the processes, develop and test the reports, the data warehouse and business intelligence, and exhaustively train the staff. And the advantage that gives them is that the ERP is reliable and dependable from day one. Staff are familiar with the ERP at go live, and the go live is smooth and uneventful. Folks, if you stop and think for a moment of the couple of really unpleasant situations that I've shared with you, you will recognize that not one of those ERPs was properly tested before go live. The seventh skill to master is make it work, effortless go live. The problem I see is that most ERPs experience problems at and after go live that at best result in short-term inefficiency and ineffectiveness, and at worst continuously compromise the effectiveness and efficiency of the business. And that leads to distrust of the ERP, spreadsheets to track information that's not available from the ERP, managers doing their own thing without overall control, and general business dysfunction. So my 8 clients exercise strong executive strategic leadership guided by the ERP Doctor Make It Work methodology and checklist to ensure that the precisely configured ERP works to its full potential and achieves all that was promised in the original marketing pitch. This is coupled to a tough, accountable go-live certificate with contracted signed accountability with penalties that hold the implementers, the C-suite and the project team, and ultimately the CEO accountable for the outcome. And the advantage that gives them is that the ERP goes live quickly and without incident and is established as a high-value strategic competitive resource boosting productivity, profitability, shareholder satisfaction, and CEO reputation from day one. And you'll remember my example of the CEO of XYZ Group, who once he was satisfied that the ERP could be made to work, took that stance. I call it the make it work stance. Gentlemen, we've seen that this can work. I don't want any more corridor talk. Now make it work. And that's a state of mind which a CEO can only hope to embrace with a thorough ownership of the system. The result of all of this is a Thrive outcome facilitated by the ERP Doctor Thrive checklist and methodology. Management of all facets of the business is tighter, and that leads to the business being more lean, so my clients experience greater profitability. And in addition, management reporting is easier, faster, and more flexible, and that leads to answers to questions executives had not previously thought to ask, now available at the click of a mouse. In addition, the reports are stable and all agree, so new, more advanced analysis becomes possible. And in addition, transaction entry and posting is faster and more accurate, and that leads to better quality transaction data and fewer clerical staff. In addition, because the data is so easy to understand, the business no longer requires ongoing involvement of expensive consultants. Would you like that from your ERP? Success from the ERP Accelerator. Reg Barry, major shareholder, CFO and COO of V3 Consulting Engineers, presented with me at a conference. The auditors just left after 6 weeks. Last year they were here for 6 months. They signed off the balance sheet without qualifications for the first time in 15 years. We have masses of management information. Profitability has improved, and we did it with one less bookkeeper. The ERP Accelerator Executive Briefing and 4-day course will teach you how to do this. Because the executive team understand and own the ERP, every facet of the operation of the ERP and every facet of the business that the ERP impacts becomes faster, more reliable, and more effective. And in addition, because the precision configuration so accurately models the real world, it has become possible to develop small pieces of clever, bespoke software around the ERP to enhance business effectiveness and enable things that were previously done in spreadsheets to be integrated. And that leads to significantly increased competitiveness. And finally, the bottom line is that an ERP implemented fully in compliance with the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator results in a business that is leaner, more profitable, and more competitive. And that leads to accelerated growth, increased shareholder value, and enhanced reputation for the CEO and all team members involved in the project. So to sum up, unlock the full potential of your ERP. This is a fundamentally different approach. Strategic executive input results in strategic executive level output. Model the real world. Results in a leaner, more efficient, and more profitable organization. Enables improved competitiveness. A game changer for your organization. Folks, this really can change the rules of the game for your organization. Look at the case studies. What are the Thrive specifics? The business is more profitable and is growing strongly. The ERP is powerfully strategically aligned. The C-suite and all managers get the information they want when they need it. The board pack is produced almost entirely out of the ERP and BI with limited manual effort. Audit time and costs are dramatically reduced. Risk of audit qualifications are considerably reduced. The opportunity for longer-term improved resource management, reduced headcount. The business attains all that was originally expected from the ERP. Unlock the full potential of your ERP with the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator. And on the course and the briefing, I will tell you how to do that. Further Thrive specifics. Answers to almost any question relating to data in the ERP available with a few mouse clicks. Even answers to questions the business had not thought previously to ask. The consultants left soon after commissioning. The ERP is a valued resource in assisting management to make the business more successful. potentially reduction in back office headcount, line management time on administrative matters reduced to focus on production while improving quality of management information. So what is really different about the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator approach? Executive custody and executive direction and facilitation. Strong focus on the strategic essence of the business. Strong focus on enabling better business decisions through high-quality data. Precision configuration, taxonomies informed by executive strategic decision support emphasis. Model the real world. Laboratory, war games, user acceptance testing, ++. Contractual go-live certificate. Turns conventional ERP implementation thinking on its head. Last but by no means least, process is a design output and not an input to implementation. Traditionally, from my experience, change in approach with regard to process is not understood by the ERP and management consulting industry. Really remind you of the case of the two clerks. The whole focus is wrong. Think of my strategic top-down process bottom-up diagram. The industry's got it wrong, folks. As an engineer, I'm telling you that. Process is something you design at the end once you have modeled the business, because as you model the business, the processes become clear. Sitting down with mid-level staff and telling you how they do their jobs and capturing into a system and expecting that to enable strategic decision support. I refer you to what Einstein is reported to have said. Would you like to learn more about precision ERP configuration? Following this, I will take a deep dive into precision ERP configuration with information you can apply immediately. Are you wondering how you can learn to apply the ERP Accelerator in practice? I'd like to invite you to attend my 4-hour executive briefing on Zoom, why your ERP is not delivering and how to fix it. I'll give you an executive level view of all that is important to manage the application of the ERP Accelerator. On completion of the briefing, you will have a solid understanding of the headlines of what you need to know to take a decision to remediate your ERP, how to manage the project once you embark on it. The briefing is not for any business executive who is not prepared to roll up their sleeves and engage with the ERP Accelerator. The briefing is for any business executive who has recognized that ERP is operating substandard levels and wants to raise the bar substantially on their ERP operation. I'd also like to invite you to alternatively attend my 4-day in-depth practical hands-on course on Zoom, implementing the ERP Doctor ERP methodology, or to send senior managers to attend. On this course, you or your staff will receive in-depth instruction with regard to each of the 7 steps of the ERP Accelerator. Delegates will receive the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator document pack to be used in every facet of the ERP Accelerator project. The 4-day course will be run over 2 weeks, 2 days each week, to give delegates time to assimilate what they've learned and minimize disruption of their daily responsibilities. Delegates to the executive briefing will also receive the Accelerator document pack. I will take delegates through a detailed strategic analysis exercise so that they're familiar with the tools and methods. On completion of the course, delegates will be equipped to undertake a detailed assessment of the health of your ERP, and if it is decided to proceed with an ERP Accelerator project, they'll be in a position to plan and execute that project. This course is for the personnel of any organization that has recognized the need to substantially raise the bar on their ERP. I'd like to make a special offer for you to send 1 executive to the executive briefing and 3 staff members to the 4-day course at a special discounted fee. Does this sound interesting? The ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator executive briefing and 4-day course are unique. Both events, as well as the ERP Accelerator, are entirely created by myself based on 28 years of experience investigating suboptimal ERP implementations and delivering successful high-value implementations and turnarounds. They are not available anywhere else. Would you like to learn more about the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology in this session? Following this, I will share a deep dive into Precision ERP configuration, which will give you insights that you can apply immediately. What is Precision ERP configuration? This graphic outlines the 7 steps of the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology, as discussed a short while ago. We're now looking at item 5, precision configuration. Let's look at some success from the ERP Accelerator. V3 Consulting Engineers, Reg Barry, major shareholder, CFO, CEO, presented at a conference. The auditors just left after 6 weeks. Last year they were here for 6 months. They signed off the balance sheet without qualifications for the first time in 15 years. With masses of management information. Profitability has improved. We did it with one less bookkeeper. The distinguishing factor in this particular case was precision configuration, cubic business model in the financial suite. Another success from the ERP Accelerator, ASCO, I've spoken about it before, again at a conference presentation with Robert Prebatch, part owner and CEO, facilitated growth in new distribution center necessity, not my words, his. Positioned ASCO as an industry leader in the management of information and therefore brand management in its category. Secured the Dior account with an immediate 12% revenue uplift. Again, a consequence of precision configuration. And you'll learn how to do this in the executive briefing and the 4-day event. Why is precision ERP configuration important? I've already shared the 1 out of 10 rating of the big brand ERP by the CEO of a FTSE 100 company. The slides that follow, I will discuss why this happened and tell you how to fix it. Bottom line, in that case, we've spent a fortune on this computer system and I cannot get the strategic executive information I need when I need it. Step 5 of the ERP Doctor 7-step ERP Accelerator is Precision ERP configuration. Precision ERP configuration is validation data that is highly hierarchically structured, that models the real world, that reflects executive strategic priorities. It's very easy to read and interpret, leading to fast and accurate posting of transactions. The structure facilitates quick and easy analysis and reporting, enabling sophisticated models. It's accompanied by disciplines that ensure quality data and strong internal audit control. It supports a dramatically different and better way of employing your ERP and other software. If you look at the relationship between computers and people, you see that computers collect, collate, summarize, synthesize, present information. Human beings interpret the results, take decisions, and take action. The importance of precision configuration in this cannot be overstressed. The goal is ultimately the right decision. The fundamental challenge is to get the right information to the right person in the right place at the right time in order to make the right decision, in order to thrive. An organization that consistently makes right decisions will prosper, and poor quality data is a major factor in bad business decisions. The military quick attack. As mentioned previously, I was a military commander trained up to brigade level. What I learned through that role is that quality intelligence, in other words information, is critical. Bad intelligence loses battles and gets own forces killed. And quality decisions must be taken quickly. Quality decisions are vital. Bad decisions lose battle and get own forces killed. Unlocking ERP value. Intuitively, fundamentally meaningful information, structured such that the computer system appears to be intelligent. Presented through reports, graphs, dashboards. These lay the foundation for sophisticated models that improve overall strategic executive decision support and enable advanced statistical techniques, advanced economic analysis, models, etc. Returning to the CEO of the large FTSE 100 corporation, I proceeded with my investigation, and this is what I found. The chart of accounts, sloppy configuration. We've touched on that before. Scraping, loading, dozing, dripping, grading, doing things. Plant spares, foodstuffs, medicines, all jumbled together with absolutely no logic, no structure. It's no wonder that they need 4 expensive people to try and make sense of this nonsense. And then the material group, a similar situation. Absolutely no logic, no structure, 3 different accounts, pipe and pipe fittings.
Yep.
This image is actually really what it's about, folks, and that's why these systems are so difficult to use. Have you had experience of data that looks like this? What is the best way to unscramble spaghetti? Frankly, don't scramble it in the first place. So unscramble the data, create data that is not scrambled in the first place, and things get a whole lot easier. So what is precision ERP configuration? You've seen this before. It's highly organized data that is easy to navigate for posting and reporting. Product category, user-defined. What you can see here for a particular client, we sat down and we analyzed user-defined field, the fundamental building blocks of their products. And you should be having user-defined fields which describe everything in your organization, so that all the intelligence about your data is contained in the system. And then 2-click drill down. And what I'm evidencing here is that if you have data that conforms to the standards that I'm advocating, you double-click there and you drill down to the next level, and to the next level, and to the next level, and to the posting level, and you could answer your questions. And you can roll up the other way just as easily and just as quickly. Contrast that to what we've just been looking at. Another example, credit note reason codes. On the left, the original codes don't tell you anything. On the right, highly structured, everything that the CEO and the CFO could possibly think of. Another situation. Golf club sound. CEO of the golfing company said to me, this is important. The leader on the American PGA, if their clubs have got a certain sound, the sale of those clubs goes up and the sale of other sounding clubs goes down. So we created some user-defined fields and we put that data in the database. And if you don't have all of this information in your database right now, this is something that you can take back to the office right now and act on. The cubic business model is a logical structure based on locations where we do what we do, functions what we do, carefully analyzed to represent the exact logic of the organization at a fine level, so that each of these cells can be allocated to a unique manager, supervisor, owner. That you can produce out of that cell a mini financial statement that they can use to measure their financial performance and other performance because it ties into your other modules. There's a lot of complexity behind this to get this really right. First time I did this, I quoted the client 90 hours to develop their chart of accounts. It took me 1,000 hours. There are some logical complexities in getting this right, but I know what they are now. I've got software to help me, and I can help you do this. It's very, very powerful. This is the matrix from an actual situation, and the individual cells that have got numbers in all represent real little entities within the organization that are doing something, consuming things. Here's an example of a report from one of those cells. The top half is coming straight out of the general ledger. The bottom half is being analyzed in a report or in the business intelligence. It's taking proportional splits of overheads and distributing them onto that business unit, so you have a gross contribution and a net contribution of that unit. So what is the cubic business model really? It's a portfolio of logic of highly structured codes, practical components, divisions, companies or operating divisions, locations where we do what we do, it's a dimension, functions what we do, it's a dimension. Data elements such as costs, revenue, assets, liabilities, plant, people, etc. Standards and conventions, outworking of intense research and development. Unique to the ERP Doctor, proprietary software builds the code scheme for the General Ledger GL Builder. Works in all ERPs. The Cubic business model is a portfolio of logical codes and management concepts. Here we see a screenshot of the GL Builder software. There's quite a few screens, so I'm just giving a representative sample. You just pick out the elements that make up that particular business unit, and you build the code scheme accordingly. Another screen out of that, what we're doing here is we're mapping the original chart of accounts onto the new chart of accounts. So as we map those items and they're accounted for, they're moved across here. This will ultimately, that end is empty, and in the process we may add a few more accounts into the new chart of accounts. Basically making sure that you can map your old records onto your new logic and use your new reports to analyze your history. What that also allows you to do is if you bring in there the chart of accounts for an organization that you're looking at acquiring during due diligence or that you have acquired, you can map their general ledger onto your general ledger, and in a matter of a couple of days you can be using all the reports that you know and understand to analyze their data. Much, much more rapid than the conventional way of doing things. The Cubic business model facilitates greatly enhanced financial analysis, advanced graphical and tabular analysis, and highly structured data in the data warehouse. It allows sophisticated planning and budgeting, overhead and revenue attribution and distribution, real net contribution, viewing corporate performance through the matrix. It's a very, very powerful concept. And it was the Cubic business model that enabled V3 to get the benefits that I've shared with you. What this enables is matrix analysis. So what we're doing now is we've got software which is sliding the matrix up and down the chart of accounts, all the other modules, and wherever there's a valid number, it's represented in the matrix. So it's a very powerful way of looking at the business. Then overhead distribution. There's a whole lot of logic that I won't explain to you now, but this is my corporate cost. So this is your financing costs, your shares, etc. And those portions which constitute overhead to the rest of the business are distributed out over the individual cells. These are the locations, the plant, the premises cost distributed over the operational divisions in that type of report that I showed you a minute ago. So my approach to taxonomies is based on zoology. I did insect collections at school, library catalog schemes I researched for my PhD, for managing my data. I was in the Army managing admin for a while, NATO filing system. It's a world-class approach, and it's not in any textbook that I know of, and you can learn about it and learn how to do it in the executive briefing, and particularly on the 4-day course. What are all the areas of the ERP that precision configuration applies to? All the attributes, including the full range of user-defined fields, item and product class and item and product master, dimensions, chart of accounts, Cubic business model, other master files and class files, projects, customers, suppliers, personnel, etc. enables small pieces of clever bespoke software that leverage the above, and we'll look at that in more detail in a few minutes. Here are some common misconceptions. The ERP is so powerful it can handle this data. The truth is that the ERP does not interpret the missing logic in the data. Humans attempt to do that based on their understanding or lack of understanding of the business. And most of the time, they hack it inaccurately. In the worst case, humans cannot make any sense of the data. Think about the gold mining company I told you about that went bankrupt. Incidentally, I had the big brand ERP vendors in. I showed them that terrible chart of accounts. And you know what the senior consultant said to me? Fred is so powerful, it can handle it. Which was absolute nonsense. So he went from me absolving the software of the parlous state of my client to taking full responsibility for the parlous state of my client. real foolishness, quite honestly. And if we look at the chart of accounts, this is the FTSE 100 company on the left, the chart of accounts, and this is the chart of accounts I developed for another client, in this case a foundry client. Again, the item class and material group code on the left, the FTSE 100 company on the right, a coal mining company. The taxonomy handbook is a fairly detailed document that I put together some years ago, which goes into a lot around taxonomies and so forth. If you attend the briefing or the 4-day course, you'll get a copy of that. Another misconception: AI is so powerful it can handle this data. The truth is that AI cannot infer logic that is completely absent in the data. Humans do that based on their understanding of business and reporting requirements, and generally they get it wrong. And in actual fact, humans hack it, which is why 3 people can produce nominally the same report and get 3 different results, and why the results do not agree from month to month. Precision ERP configuration relates to the way human beings think about information and makes it easy to interpret the information and make decisions. What does your company really have? I submit for your consideration that you have an IBIS, an Integrated Business Information System. So you have some form of ERP or accounting system. You almost certainly have some sort of industry-specific package. You have a data warehouse and BI, and if you don't, you should have. You've probably got some custom development. You've probably got some customization, at least in the ERP, and quite possibly in some of the other areas. And undoubtedly, you've got a whole bunch of spreadsheets. Because spreadsheets are the way of fixing that this is not done particularly well. And then what you find within this environment is that there is a lack of precision configuration, and so you end up with all sorts of customization and fixes and goodness knows what, all trying to deal with the fact that your data is a mess. Generally, these systems are configured badly, sloppy configuration, and therefore they're unable to integrate properly. So it proves necessary to customize in ways that are only required because of the inaccuracy of the data in order to compensate. And the end result of this inadequate approach is that there remains a multitude of spreadsheets and manual effort and frequently consultants. This is generally done without rigorous engineering controls and management. A data warehouse is a necessity, not a luxury. You should have one. The core components of an integrated business information system: the ERP for the core financial transactions and business processes, CRM, customer relationship management, WMS, warehouse management system, TMS, transport management system, other industry-specific vertical systems, business intelligence and data warehouse, custom systems, business-specific functionality and processes, legacy systems, often business-specific, and then an integration layer, APIs, middleware, and automation, links between the platforms. If we look at the data integration of any IBIS, any ERP, and beyond, what we find is anything that has a financial quantum feeds through to the general ledger. And that happens electronically, digitally, through an integrated interface. In the case of an integrated suite of software, it may happen electronically if you've got interface software that works between both bits of software. It may be a case of exporting a comma-separated value file from the one and importing it into the other. And in the extreme bad practice case, it may even look like fingers on the keyboard. If you then look at the human resources component, you find that there are a variety of components going from the HR module elsewhere in the system. And then if you look at production planning, you've got further links that go there, and so on and so on and so forth. Now, if we come to the situation where we're talking about the business, the ERP, and the data warehouse and business intelligence, this is your ideal situation. You have precision configuration right in the basic interface of the ERP, so that you have nicely organized data in the ERP, which just flows neatly through to the data warehouse and therefore to the business intelligence, and that enables Thrive decisions. What most organizations have is something that looks like this. They've got a jumbled mess where they load the data into the ERP. They've got a jumbled mess where they try to make sense of the jumbled mess in the ERP. And the result is that you end up with expensive senior people writing simple reports, maintaining systems, costing you a lot of money, and you end up throwing money away when you can't even make good decisions out of that. How do you remediate that? Well, if you put precision taxonomies into your extract, transform, load, into your data warehouse, and sort out the data going into the business intelligence layer, that will fix part of the problem, and you should get a much better quality result then. And then eventually you can drop that down into the ERP and re-implement or remediate the ERP. So there are a number of different techniques that one can use for this. One of the things that this enables is small pieces of bespoke software, which is highly structured classification tables, create an environment in which clever manipulation and application of the data becomes possible. This enables the development of small pieces of bespoke software that are tuned to the exact dynamics of the organization. They leverage the intelligence and standardization contained in the code schemes. This can dramatically enhance the value that the solution delivers to the business. It can also create competitive advantage, and we'll look at an example of that just now. It should be an integral part of your thinking with regard to implementation. What else will precision ERP configuration facilitate? Use it in acquisitions. I touched on this a minute ago. Use it in due diligence investigation. Touched on that a minute ago. Map existing data of new company onto existing precision strategic taxonomies in the data warehouse. Extract, transform, load. Run all available reports against the new acquisition within days. Integrate and optimize the new business quickly and efficiently. Folks, this is powerful. There is so much power in having accurate, well-engineered precision taxonomies, precision classifications. The ASCO success we've looked at, recapped, and I'm going to talk in a few minutes, if you stay on, about how that was accomplished in more detail. Here's someone who used to believe the traditional approach to ERP was the only way. Sean, when I worked with Sean, he was the CEO and part owner of a medium-sized ERP implementation firm. They just delivered a failed project at ASCO. I was commissioned to lead the ERP re-implementation at ASCO using my methods. I insisted that Sean lead his team personally. Almost immediately we bumped heads. His team had produced a pack of process diagrams which he proudly presented to me. I glanced at them and put them on the shelf and never looked at them again. He was not happy with me. Instead, I asked for a spreadsheet with all the validation tables, and he stalled. Never had that request before. During the project, he observed my methods, particularly precision ERP configuration. After achieving a stellar outcome for ASCO, as reported, he contracted me to help his firm with a number of his other projects. As a result, he took my methods on board and gave me the following testimonial. My biggest learning experience in terms of how to successfully implement an ERP system. My first reaction to Dr. Robertson's approach was confusion and resistance. I realized how it could substantively improve my company's success. I bought in and embedded his principles into my organization. Since then, I've applied his philosophies in the organizations I lead. Following the initial project we undertook with Dr. Robertson, our company applied his principles on new projects, resulting in a far greater percentage of successful projects and customers who got what they expected. I would recommend James to an organization in need of a person who's extremely skilled at rescuing a failed project or assisting a company in need of improvement. So I can do that for you, and I can tell you how you can do it for yourselves. As part of my international business, these are some of the clients who've benefited from my methods over the years. The true value of precision configuration: exceptionally high quality data, extremely easy to post accurately and quickly, extremely easy, flexible, and powerful to analyze and report on. Facilitates greatly improved high-value executive-level strategic decision-making. The decisions to thrive. Properly used leads to greatly improved competitiveness and profitability. It enhances profitable growth. It requires focused management and change control. Would you like to learn how to do this to your ERP? Following this, I will share in detail the story of how I delivered a stellar outcome to ASCO. This including them having to build a much larger distribution center because the business was growing so much, and this was a consequence of what I enabled them to do with precision configuration. Are you wondering how you can learn to apply the ERP methodology in practice? I'd like to invite you to attend my 4-hour executive briefing on Zoom while your ERP is not delivering and how to fix it, and I will give you an executive level view of all that is important to manage the application of the ERP Accelerator. On the completion of the briefing, you'll have a solid understanding of the headlines of what you need to know to take a decision to remediate your ERP and how to manage the project once you embark on it. The briefing is not for any business executive who is not prepared to roll up their sleeves and engage with the Accelerator. The briefing is for any business executive who has recognized that their ERP is operating to substandard levels and wants to raise the bar substantially on their ERP operation. I would also like to invite you to alternatively attend my 4-day in-depth practical hands-on course on Zoom, implementing the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology, or to send senior managers to attend. On this course, you or your staff will receive in-depth instruction with regard to each of the 7 steps of the ERP Accelerator. Delegates will receive the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator document pack to be used in every facet of the ERP project. The 4-day course will be run over 2 weeks, 2 days each week, to give delegates time to assimilate what they've learned and minimize disruption to their daily responsibilities. Delegates to the executive briefing will receive the same ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator document pack. I will take delegates through a detailed strategic analysis exercise so that they're familiar with the tools and methods. On completion of the course, delegates will be equipped to undertake a detailed assessment of the health of your ERP. And if it is decided to proceed with an ERP Accelerator project, they will be in a position to plan and execute that project. This course is for the personnel of any organization that has recognized the need to substantially raise the bar on their ERP. I'd like to make a special offer for you to send 1 executive to the executive briefing and 3 staff members to the 4-day course at a special discounted fee. Does this sound interesting? ERP Doctor Accelerator Executive Briefing and 4-day course are unique. Both events, as well as the Accelerator, are entirely created by myself based on 28 years of experience investigating suboptimal ERP implementations and delivering successful high-value implementations and turnarounds. They're not available anywhere else. Both events will take place shortly. The scheduling of the events will be provided by email after you indicate a desire to attend one or other of the events or to send delegates. Would you like to learn how I delivered exceptional value to ASCO using the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology? In what follows, I will take you through a detailed account of how I delivered an exceptional high-value outcome for ASCO applying the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology. The ASCO case study, how a Thrive outcome was achieved in practice. Would you like to hear how I achieved one of my most successful outcomes? Now I'm going to focus on the ASCO case study with particular emphasis on precision configuration. In what follows, please be aware that the client co-authored 2 white papers and conference presentations with me, so the information I'm disclosing is in the public domain. An example of what can be achieved by thorough application of the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator. Why is this important? You are by now familiar with the ERP Accelerator. In what follows, all facets of the Accelerator were employed. Here's a common misconception: don't customize your ERP. This is false. Strategic customization is essential to unlock the full potential of the ERP. By blocking strategic customization, you eliminate the opportunity to create a really high-value ERP implementation, as in the case of the XYZ Group case study. Note that modern ERPs make it relatively easy to achieve strategic configuration. The ASCO statement of benefits is previously discussed. How was this achieved? The story behind the ASCO success. It's September. I've just completed my lecture to the Gibbs Executive MBA class on IT governance and ERP strategic value in the upmarket main auditorium. A delegate approaches me, dressed impeccably in a three-piece dark suit with neatly folded handkerchief in his pocket and a striking blue tie. Dr. Robertson, my name is Robert Prebadge. I'm sitting with a failed ERP implementation. Can you help me? By all means. When are you available to meet for an hour? We arrange a time. We meet and Robert outlines the situation and describes his business. I'm CEO of this 90-year-old family business with half ownership along with my brother. We purchased an ERP and went through the implementation. We spared no expense and did all we were told was necessary. The implementation has failed. I had to abort it. Can you assist? Certainly. I suggest that I undertake my standard short duration executive pulse measurement investigation. That sounds ideal. Please submit a proposal. I submitted my standard pulse measurement proposal and it was accepted. Step 1, diagnose the pulse measurement. I interviewed the leadership of the business, starting with Robert with my standard questions. Then undertook a detailed walkthrough of the business led by Robert. I discovered that the strategic essence of the business was brand management. The more effective the brand management, the greater the sales and the greater the profits. Brand management was a contractual requirement from every one of the global fragrance brands that ASCO distributed. Percentage of the retail price was allocated for brand management and marketing and had to be reported on and accounted for. In the existing system, brand management was being attempted in 20,000 accounts in the general ledger of the legacy system, a major source of inefficiency and frustration. I then interviewed Sean, the CEO of the implementer, and his team, and undertook a walkthrough of the software and a review of the configuration. I submitted my report, the findings. Robert had left the project with the IT manager, a chap in his mid-20s with an IT degree. After all, it was an IT project, wasn't it? First mistake. Sean had left the project with one of his mid-level project managers. Second mistake. The strategic essence, brand management, had been totally overlooked. Biggest mistake and the reason the first implementation was aborted. The configuration was sloppy and substandard relative to my standards. Not commonplace since my standards are not widely known. The fourth mistake. The project had started with detailed process mapping. Fifth mistake. The recommendations. The executive sponsor must be Robert. The implementer team must be led by Sean. Sean must attend weekly project meetings and all-important workshops in person. Configuration needed to be done from scratch. Brand management had to be front and center of the project. Are you following what I'm saying? Step 2, executive custody. Robert accepted my findings and asked me if I would take charge of the project. I agreed, subject to Robert taking personal charge of the project from the business side and my having an open door to Robert. Robert participating in all key workshops and guiding the project from a business perspective. Also subject to Sean leading the implementer team and at least attending weekly project meetings and key workshops. This was all agreed. It was further agreed that we would do things my way, a strategic project leader. No in-house project manager or schedule and related project management by the implementer company. Precision configuration was fundamental. Step 3, strategic alignment. It was agreed that the strategy of the business, the essence of the business and how it thrived, was brand management. Accordingly, for the balance of the project, I devoted particular attention to brand management, particularly in the precision configuration. Decision, re-implement versus replace. I'd found that the ERP was entirely suitable, so no reason to replace. Since the system had not gone live and the configuration was sloppy, it was agreed that we would effectively do a completely new re-implementation, retaining what we could, which turned out to be very little. Step 5, precision configuration. We then moved to precision configuration, and this was a major focus for the next few months of the project. constrained by Robert's availability and the time to develop the bespoke software that I specified. Point of challenge. As soon as I commenced work on the implementation, Sean came to me. "James, you'll need these," he said, and presented me with a thick file of process diagrams. I thanked him for them, glanced at them, and put them on the shelf where they remained for the rest of the project. My focus was on strategic configuration, not workflow. The two are mutually exclusive. The project needs the same business personnel for precision ERP configuration and process mapping on top of their day jobs. Staff do not have time for both if done properly, so process mapping has to go. This is a really important point. Note also that the way that most process mapping is done is sloppy and inexact and causes all sorts of problems. Remember the example I gave you earlier. Workflow would be resolved in the laboratory in stage 6 as a design output. Sean frowned, clearly not comfortable with my reaction. But after the successful outcome of the project, he adopted my approach. The further testimonial that I shared earlier. Initiating precision ERP configuration. Instead, I asked for an in-depth walkthrough of the software now that I had a better idea of the requirements. This was conducted forthwith with Robert and Sean in attendance. I made various observations and comments to facilitate common understanding as we progressed. I also requested an Excel workbook with all the validation table specifications, together with all data currently in the tables. I had to ask for this 3 times, did not conform to standard ERP practice. "Sean, I really need that workbook urgently, please." Finally, after getting pushy, I received the spreadsheet. We started with credit note reason codes, and you've seen this example before. Really doesn't give you many answers to your questions. The high value replacement solution, we've talked about this before as well. You'll see the neatly structured hierarchical caters for everything. We developed a significant number of user-defined tables, one of which is the product category, which again we've talked about before, and really encapsulating the entire business in the ERP. Product class, we turned it into a brand hierarchy, so you see all the different brands in the product class. And that's a key element of this design. Bespoke code maintenance. Because we now had very structured codes and very strong rules about the codes, we were able to specify some bespoke software for adding new products to the product master and making sure that they were correctly classified. We were also able to write software which replicated the brand lines into the project master. There was absolutely no integration between the projects module and the products module of the system. When I said to Sean that I wanted to integrate the two with a piece of software, he told me it couldn't be done, so I found somebody who could do it. And this is a fairly common shortcoming with implementers, a little bit blinkered, if I can put it that way. And then we created a users-defined table, 29 expense heads to classify every aspect of the brand management. And so those were created in the projects master per brand line, per month, per 29 expense heads. So detailed budgeting and then tracking of actuals in the projects modules. Are you getting this? Step 6, prove it works, the laboratory war games. We kitted out one of the training rooms with computers. The entire core team, including consultants, sat together, facilitated by myself, with Robert and Sean where appropriate. We thrashed the system until we could no longer break it. We established the operational processes. We trained all users. Step 7, make it work. Go live. Once every facet of the system was tested, we set the date for go live. Go live went flawlessly with Robert very clearly in charge. 5 months from start to finish. 1 year on, a Thrive outcome. The standard of brand management had dramatically improved. Sales and profits were up. There was a universal culture within the company of data precision, proper capitalization and spelling. Neatness everywhere. Resulting efficiencies included reports that were presentation quality straight off the ERP. Brand management was running as a premium service to suppliers and the company. quoting from the conference presentation, positioned ASCO as an industry leader. We've heard about that before. Dior came to Robert and said, we've heard that you can do in terms of brand management. Our present distributor can't do that, so we want to give the distribution to you. Within a few months, the transition had taken place and revenue was up by 12%, close to overnight. Subsequently wrote 2 case studies with Robert that were presented at conferences, the highest accolade a consultant can receive from a client. So there's the one conference and there's the other. Would you like to be able to do this with your ERP consultant? So facilitated growth, new distribution center necessity, Robert at the conference. There you see the distribution center. Folks, to me, this is kind of really stellar sort of stuff, that the differentiation was so great, but the increase in sales and the increase in turnover was such that they needed to build a much bigger distribution center. I think that speaks volumes for the strategic value that was created, and we can potentially do that for you. Summing up, the ERP Accelerator methodology delivers results. CEO custody is critical, implementer director custody is critical, strategic project leader is vital, strategic alignment is vital. Precision ERP configuration to ERP Doctor standards is at the heart of this success. Laboratory and war games must be rigorously conducted. Process design is an output and not an input. Designing ERP implementations not to fail is an absolutely fundamental tenet of what we're talking about. Would you like an outcome like ASCO for your organization? Would you like to learn the ERP Doctor ERP methodology? Are you wondering how you can learn to apply the ERP Accelerator in practice? I'd like to invite you to attend my 4-hour executive briefing on Zoom, why your ERP is not delivering and how to fix it. I'll give you an executive level view of all that is important to manage the application of the ERP Accelerator. On completion of the briefing, you'll have a solid understanding of the headlines of what you need to know to take a decision to remediate your ERP, how to manage the project once you embark on it. The briefing is not for any business executive who's not prepared to roll up their sleeves and engage. The briefing is for any business executive who's recognized that ERP is operating at substandard levels and wants to raise the bar substantially. I'd also like to invite you to alternatively attend my 4-day in-depth practical hands-on course on Zoom, implementing the ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator methodology, or to send senior managers to attend. On this course, you or your staff will receive an in-depth instruction with regard to each of the 7 steps of the ERP Accelerator. Delegates will receive the ERP Doctor Accelerator document pack to be used in every facet of the ERP Accelerator project. The 4-day course will be run over 2 weeks, 2 days each week, to give delegates time to assimilate what they've learned and minimize disruption to their daily activities. Delegates to the executive briefing will receive the same ERP Doctor Accelerator document pack. I will take delegates through a detailed strategic analysis exercise so they're familiar with the tools and methods. On completion of the course, delegates will be equipped to undertake a detailed assessment of the health of your ERP. And if it is decided to proceed with an ERP Accelerator project, they will be in a position to plan and execute that project. This course is for the personnel of any organization that has recognized the need to substantially raise the bar on their ERP. ERP Doctor ERP Accelerator Executive Briefing and 4-day course are unique. Both events, as well as the ERP Accelerator, are entirely created by myself based on 28 years of experience investigating suboptimal ERP implementations and delivering successful high-value implementations and turnarounds. They are not available anywhere else. Both events will take place shortly. So thank you for your time. I really look forward to meeting you. Thank you so much. Goodbye.